Welcome to this week's episode of Being Human. I'm back with Thomas Juli. He is his latest book is the human. Well, I'm going to bring up my printout because I'm very privileged to have a PDF version.
Yeah, well, this is how it looks in German.
You see, yeah, here we go. Thomas has got the proper book, Human Business, with the subtitle "How to Rediscover Our Human Being to Shape Our Future." So that's in fact, I love this subtitle: "How to Rediscover Our Human Being to Shape Our Future." So tell us a little bit, Thomas, about a little bit about your background, I suppose, for people who are not familiar with you, and then we'll get into the book.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I call myself a human business architect. That is like my motivation is really to help businesses to become more human, and this way thrive in the digital age. My background is I'm an economist. I've been working as an agile coach for many years, organizational development in various industries. And at present, I'm working as a human business architect and agile transformation coach for Allianz, the insurance corporation.
Right. And we should also say you're also a ski instructor.
I'm a ski and snowboard instructor. Yes.
Who knows what else? You're sort of this, almost like a Renaissance man somehow. Right. Yeah. So that's your background. So economist turned a coach, and now this is this is not your first time writing around these subjects. But what's the core message, I suppose, of this book?
Well, I think the subtitle says it all. It's about quite a few people there are, overwhelmed by the many changes we experience in the digital age. The so-called VUCA world, volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. And more technology is technology seems to take over our world. And I think this is scary. And as long as we treat ourselves and treat our peers as human resources. And when I was starting to work on the book, I thought, what does it take to be human in the digital age? This was actually the first working title of the manuscript. So I delved into it, and it's like it was kind of like a therapy. Where do I start? How can I rediscover my inner core? And there was like a discrepancy with how we work these days, or we used to work, and how we are, really, what's our true nature. And I thought, let's rediscover this and see how I can unfold it. And it's still a journey. People say, well, I would be an expert. No, I have some way to carry with me, because over all these decades, I'm becoming more human, I pretend, or I'm trying to become more human. And this way help shape a more human environment. Right. Okay.
And what have you discovered so far about yourself, your core in this journey?
Actually, I've been functioning quite well. Let's put it this way. Okay. I think I have been a very effective and very successful human resource at work. You can tell this. Okay. I had a good career. Project management, program management, agile, you name it, and various industries and management and leadership roles. But when you have family, and then your kids don't care about all of this. They look at you at the core. They want to be around because you are a human being. And it's like in the book, there's a chapter, boys don't cry.
Yeah,
men do.
That one. Yeah.
And I talked with his name was Jay Goldstein, another agile coach in the US, and he brought this up, and we talked about how we actually hide our emotions, especially guys, and emotions are very human. This is like we're made up of emotions, you can say, or also thoughts, and why do we hide these, and why do social norms make us believe that showing emotions, showing your vulnerability, being human, is a bad thing? Well, if you look back to the 19th century with Taylorism, it's like where they say like, okay, let's model everything like a big machine, and everything has to be very efficient. And then we have resources, also human resources. They're kind of like objects. Back then, people were not educated, they were not trained, they were not highly skilled. That changed in the meantime. And so this Tayloristic world worked for quite a long time, where we could plan things like a machine, engineering. And now in the VUCA world, all of a sudden we are confronted with problems which are, let's say, wicked, which are complex. And all of a sudden this model comes to a limit. And what do we do next? Can we plan the next 5 years? Yeah, it's really funny. How do we know what in 5 years will be? I mean, how many additional lockdowns will we experience? How many new pandemics will we experience? We don't know. So what is it? What's our compass? If we cannot find the compass in, say, technology or in the old models, where do we start? And in the book I'm explaining, it's actually start with ourselves, because more or less all the orientation we thrive is inside of us. We just have to unlock it.
Right. And then it sounds like part of what you're discovering is your emotional core. Would that be right? Yeah.
Well, the other thing is like reframing. It's like when kids and when they're 3, 4 years, 5 years old, their favorite question is like, why? And they constantly ask why. They're very curious. And as soon as we of course, we play along with this game until we were sick and tired of it and say, God, whatever, because it is. Because, right. Period, end of story. Don't ask so many questions. Well, it's kind of like we block the natural curiosity, the natural inquisitiveness and creativity, you can say, asking questions, trying to find out how do things work, why do they happen a certain way, and what do I do if I don't get to find the answers? Where do I go? And it starts with say sometimes kindergarten or elementary school, we unlearn this curiosity, you can say, and I think that when you watch younger kids play, they're kind of like, they're totally present. They're the here and the now, and they don't worry about the future. They're just the here and the now. It's like, and this present is, there are no limits. Okay. And they get so much out of it. And when this is the stage where we can learn the most, this is the stage where we can explore and find out the most. And unfortunately, most of us have unlearned this skill.
Yeah. Right. And so do you see that being part of your rediscovering of your human being is relearning that curiosity, that playfulness?
Yeah, sometimes I'm still taking myself too serious. And but sometimes I thought, okay, well, I can be concerned about quite a few things, but let's do an actual reframing. And I'd like to give you an example of a reframing. You can ask on a meta level, what will the future bring? How will the future look like with all the technology and what have you? Or we can ask, how do we want to live? Basically, right. The same question, but the first question is passive because we are reacting. And the second question, how do we want to live, is an active question. So we are in the driver's seat. How do we want to shape our future? Now, if we want to answer this very simple question, we first have to know what we really want. And this is the tricky part for some people. Okay. So, or we can say that, okay, there's a crisis. Let's say with Corona. Okay, how can it be a chance? What new opportunities arise because of the lockdowns? What can I do differently? And just asking these reframing these questions can open new horizons, new spaces, you can say. And it's very simple. It can be done playful, and it's more innovative.
Right. Yeah. And that's the kind of questions that kids ask very naturally, right?
Absolutely.
Oh, Daddy said we can't do this. What can we do now instead? Like, the kids are always coming up with creative ways around what boundary I put in.
Exactly. Yeah. So we are not, let's face it, we're not victims of the digital transformation. Actually, we started it. Okay. Now, the thing is, on the one hand, we want to promote, technology. It's more getting more sophisticated with AI and you name it. And at the same time, we're losing orientation of what we truly want and where we want to go. So it's kind of like a contradiction. It's an oxymoron, you can say. But we lose the perspectives. So I think it's very dangerous because this way, if we're not careful, we become actually victims of the machines we create. And then you see all the movies and what have you. It's like with AI and they're taking over the world and who are we? And okay, if you and me, if we think we're human resources, we have to compete with other resources such as computers. And 10 years or so, maybe in 5 years, they're so advanced, I'm not sure if I can compete with a computer, since I'm a resource, but I'm a human being, so there's much more. A computer will not ever be able to replicate. That's, for example, creativity, intuition, emotions, what have you.
Right. Yeah, it's almost as if, we have the two things going on at once, right? There is this digitization of society and of our environment, and simultaneously there's a pull away from that because of the risks of us becoming somehow subsumed into this digital world in which we lose that specialness of what makes us human, right?
Exactly.
And so we I think this is what your book is talking to. It's like there's this is almost as fast as our environment becomes more digitized, we have to just as quickly and ably regain our humanity, our sense of self, what it is that we want from this society. We have to keep asking that question, and perhaps we have to ask it even more frequently because it's changing so much.
Exactly. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. No, that's that makes a lot of sense. And there's a diagram towards the end of the book where you lay out these three levels of I suppose consciousness when it comes to organizing ourselves. The first is intimidation, using power tools like coercion and so on. And there's information, using management tools and KPIs and everything we understand about information-based management system. And then there's inspiration, which requires leadership. And of course, doesn't require any digital technology. And that really resonated with me. We want to get to this space where as leaders, we're seeking to inspire others. We're seeking to enable others to find the inspiration within themselves. And that's where we want to be. And then we are only using informational tools, digital tools in a way to enable that.
Yeah. It's kind of like, okay, let's compare us to Formula One racing car or to Ferrari or what have you, Mercedes. Okay, it's very sophisticated. It's fancy. It's great, but we don't have any gas. We don't use gas, or we pull the handbrake and we only go, let's say, 30 miles an hour, even though we can go 120 miles. It's like no. It's like we don't. There's a limit. We don't want to use all the potential we have. It's silly. It's plain stupid. We can say, and it's like it's kind of like when you have all the capacity, why not use it? Why not explore it for our own well-being? And in the book also criticized this vile theory of shareholder value. Actually, Steve Denning he talks a lot about it, and it's bullshit. Basically, it's the dumbest idea in the world, and has been, because it doesn't generate any value. And human business is about value generation for and by people. Okay,
right.
So in human business, we create a space. I call this a human or creative space that helps, develop or evolve into a happy workplace. Because this is like a space or place where we can unfold our potential. And we're not machines. We're not resources. We're human beings. This does not mean that we have to throw out everything which we have done in the past with tools and templates and processes. No. But the perspective, the attitude, the outlook is completely different. It's not about say, producing new goods and services. It's actually about, okay, why are we doing this? What's the value behind it? What's the benefit? Share a story, come up with a story. And it's not about shareholders. They get their share, no doubt, but this does not create or generate any value. I mean, this is like, where things change. And this is, I think, why, human business is very, very different from traditional business.
Right. Well, it's maybe worth unpacking that a bit. So shareholder value is bullshit, and it doesn't create any share, and it doesn't create any value. Okay, so just expand on that a bit, folks, for those who are still wedded to that model. Yeah.
Well, the question is like, okay, let's say shareholder value is important. Okay, let's talk about stakeholders. Because like the Klaus Schwab, he talks about stakeholder capitalism, and this is the new thing. Actually, it's not really new because they talked about it in the 1920s and 1930s about it, and it was too complex. And then Milton Friedman came along and say, well, it's all about shareholder value. It's like, and then we got indoctrinated and lost our creativity. Okay, let's say stakeholder capitalism it is, as the World Economic Forum, Klaus Schwab says, or pretends or claims. Okay, who are the most important stakeholders? Definitely not the shareholders. But the most important stakeholders would actually be our customers, even though actually customers are not stakeholders by definition. But say, okay, the customers. Then who is the second most important stakeholder? It's us, the employee. And then we have basically the society, where the company is functioning in, and the community and the company, and shareholder come last. Because if we focus on the first stakeholders, shareholders will eventually be most happy because they get the most best share. But it's a result. It's not a goal. Yeah. So the question is like, okay, what is our driver? Is it the company, or is it actually the customer, or is it the human being? And I'm saying it has to be people. It has to be the human being. And this way it forces us to widen our horizon.
Right. But isn't the problem with putting customers first, something like we see in Amazon, right? Where we got these stories of, the drivers having to pee in bottles because, they've made the customer king and now, or queen, and now we have to race to get the parcel on time and, to the detriment of our employees' well-being.
That's a good point. I know that quite a few people say, well, you look at very innovative companies such as Amazon, Apple, and Google. They put customers first. Yes, especially in the agile world. This is what we see. I'm saying it's not enough. It's not sufficient because what happens to the employees? I mean, that's one thing. And if you look at Amazon, Apple, and Google, what is their share to community, to society? When they try to evade taxes, this is like basically the community, society gives them a lot. What do they give back? Is it just money? No. It's like they have to pay their fair share, and this is actually win-win. It's not that they say reduce profits. Eventually, they get it back because more stable society, more stable environment. It helps them too. But it's this kind of like I call it myopic view of pure agile companies. They have transformed, they have made some progress, but they are not where they could be. In my book, I have the metaphor, the image of a metamorphosis of the caterpillar turning into butterfly. Whereas the caterpillar is like the traditional business, focusing on profits, on the company. Then you have the cocoon, which is an agile company focusing on the customer. And then the butterfly, unfolding the huge all the potential, that's a human business focusing on us, the people. Because you can also ask the question, what's the business of business? You can ask, a traditional company would say it's profits, okay? Or it's shareholder, what have you. And, what's the business of business for an agile company would be maybe customer. Peter Drucker would say this. So it's all about generating customer. Fine. And I'm saying the business of business is people. It's us. It's human. Okay. Why would you start business in the first place? Well, we need to have started business. Yes. Why? because we have to earn a living. Okay, fine. What is it for? It's about us. It's about people. So we can bring this in. It's much stronger. It's more flexible. It's more sustainable.
Right. And when you say it's about people, but that itself, I suppose, in what regard? Like, is it, to extend your metaphor, is it something about people unfolding? Is it something about people realizing their potential? Like, what in regard to people?
Well, that's a tough question. When I'm saying it's about people, it's like we have to ask, like, why do we start? It's basically starting with why. Simon Sinek talks about it. We have to. What's the purpose of doing business? And is it something where there's an overlap with what we do individually as well as in a team? In the book, I talk about the model, MVP model, not minimal viable product, but motivation, vision, and practice. So we have to understand, we want to understand, what's the purpose of a company? What are the goals? What are the vision? Okay, let's say this is a circle. Then we can ask, okay, what's our personal purpose? What's our vision? What are our goals? If there's an overlap with the MVP of the company, that's good, because then we can identify with the company. It's more joyful. It's like it's part of us. And then we have the team or the community of employees. Okay, they too have a purpose. And when we bring all these three MVPs together and there's an overlap, I mean, that's a very strong community. This is in a project, at a project level, it's a wow project. That's like, it doesn't feel like work. It's like it's a flow. It's like leaves a legend, and it makes a difference. This is like the overlap of this MVP model. If it's just a job, this is fine. It's absolutely legitimate. I go there from 8 to 4 o'clock, and I earn a living fine, and then what have you, fine. But my heart is not in it. But if my heart is in it, I care. You had Richard Sheridan on your show a couple of months ago, and he talks about how Menlo Innovations uses joy as a business driver. Joy, trust, and respect, where people feel part of being a team, being part of something bigger. And the quality is better, the delivery is better, productivity is better, and it's more than a job. Okay. And this can be replicated very easily, but it starts also at the top, and this is like where I guess you can say the rubber hits the road, meets the road. It's like, how authentic are we? And fortunately, I see there are more and more companies who understand this. Quite a few of those companies are listed in the book, The Healing Organization. I talk about Menlo Innovations. I talk about quite a few examples of the German Mittelstand, small and medium enterprises. And there's a growing number of businesses, also social businesses, that understand this new paradigm, you can say.
Yeah, I think so. And I love that idea of joy as an organizing principle, because one of the indicators we have in our bodies and in our emotional systems, if we're on track, right? And if we're doing something that's purposeful and is serving the society and is in line with who we are at our core, is we start to experience joy, right? And
exactly.
So using that as an organizing principle for our business, to me, resonates, right? Because let's say put customers first, for example. Well, okay, now it may possibly cause them some joy over that, but it's not, I don't really, that doesn't, just because I put the customer first doesn't really tell me if I'm on track in terms of doing what is best aligned with my purpose on the planet, or however you want to frame it.
Exactly.
Whereas if I'm checking in with people and asking, using that as a yardstick, right? What's my joy quotient in the organization? It gives me a very different orientation.
Well, some the listeners may say, okay, what can you start? How can you implement it? And in the dailies I have, the sync meetings I have every morning with my teammates, we ask the 3 questions, which are use also in Agile. It's like, what have I accomplished yesterday? What's my plan today? And where do you need help? And where do you see any issues? We actually start with a different question. We ask, what are we grateful for? And or what will make me happy today? It could be anything. It could be anything. It doesn't have to be related to work. It could be anything. And then we track these, I say, happy elements, just like any other task. So after a while, we have this happiness wall. Okay. And so you get an idea of, okay, all these factors, they contribute to a happy work environment. Let's see how we can build this in. Okay. Yeah. Besides this very question, what are you grateful for? How do you feel? What makes you happy today? It allows us to bring in the human being. It allows us to bring in us. It's not just work. It's part of us. And it could be that, say, a teammate says, like, you know what? I'm not grateful. I'm just like, I'm happy if I can sleep next night. It's like, why? I couldn't sleep. I have a stomach ache, or my kid was sick and stuff. Okay, fine. That's important for me to know. If I were a project manager, because I have to be careful what things what tasks this person will work on. Or if I decide, go home, sleep. I just want you to be healthy, because if you're sick and you cannot come to work for a week, it doesn't help us. Yeah. So bring in the human element, a daily work. And it doesn't weigh anything. It doesn't really cost anything, starting with this very simple question.
Yeah. As well as gratitude. And I remember you sharing that from your, in the last podcast, you talked about the joy wall that you would create, and you get a sense over time of like exactly what was making the team happy. But this gratitude question is also interesting. Like, and you talk about that in the latest book, Human Business. But what's why that question?
Why that question? Because when we ask what we're grateful for, it goes beyond all perspectives. It's a kind of combination of past, present, and future. What are we grateful for? It kind of almost forces you to be more present, be more in the here and now. And when you're grateful for something, it actually brings in joy, or you can actually rediscover joy within. Because like when you're grateful for something, it could be something happening outside. Okay, this could only be a trigger, because a trigger for something what you feel inside. So when we realize that joy is actually within, it's a pretty cool thing. A couple of weeks ago, when I started Allianz, I was overwhelmed by some of all the meetings. My schedule was full, and I was like, well, wonderful. And I thought, okay, I asked the question, how can this full schedule help me to become calm?
Great. That's a reframing.
And it's kind of the black swan. And there's a blog post about it. And I told my wife, so this is the question I'm asking right now. And she replied, okay, let me know when you have the answer, because I'm curious. And I thought, I have no idea. And I was pondering about it. And I thought, like, what is it? I mean, actually, first of all, just reframing the question, basically, how can it help me? This was a great help. And I found out, okay, the calmness, or, the peace I'm looking for, it's not out there. It's, again, starting with me. Okay, it's always there. It's kind of like all the clutter with all the meetings, all the things, I want to do, or react. I cannot see this inner peace, the inner calm anymore. So it actually starts with me. Now, the moment I realized this, it made things easier, and it was more and more playful and less serious, you can say. And some of the meetings at the Allianz, and actually there are also quite a lot of other companies like LinkedIn, they start every meeting with a mindful moment of 1 minute of silence and say, well, we want to give you the chance to arrive. 1 minute of silence. You can either want to think about the last meeting, or you just want to listen to your, becoming aware of your breathing, or just try to arrive. And it's very simple, can make a huge difference. Every time I ask this question, it's kind of like going out on a limb, because I don't know how people react. And I think, stupid. Not a single time anyone complained about it and saying, well, this is stupid, this is esoteric or anything. Never. They either say, well, this is pretty cool, or that is anything, but it creates or changes the atmosphere and becomes more open and more creative, you can say. And the black swan for finding calm in lots of meetings, it's actually within us.
Right. And when you say black swan, just explain that for people who you're not.
Well, black swan is like, the question is like, can there be black swans? And people say no, there cannot be black swan because it's very seldom. It's like you don't see black swans. Actually, there are black swans, but they're very, very seldom. And you just have to look for it, and maybe you overlook them. But yeah, they happen. It's kind of we just have to open our senses, become more. And so this is kind of like it seems to be like contradiction. There cannot be something like a black swan. They cannot be calm in lots and lots of meetings because it's all hectic and stress. Actually, yes. It starts with us.
If we shift our perception, yeah.
Yes. So on my blog, there's this article on the, just search for black swan and you can read about it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I like that. It reminds me of a Shashin Shah who we had on the show at his company. He takes it even a step further, and every hour they have like 3-minute silent meditation in the office.
Yes.
This is in the office. It's a similar concept. No, I like that. So, and you found yourself, do you now have more calm with your full schedule?
Yes, I do. I mean, sometimes there are still weeks which are hectic. And, but whenever I remind myself, okay, I have to start with myself, and the strength and the joy or the energy is within me, it's easier. Also, it's like, it helped me to be more mindful or more cautious about accepting certain meetings. And being more disciplined, you can say. But as soon as I know or find out also my energy is draining, it's just going down the hill, I either pause or just like cancel out. It's like forget it, I'm done for the day because I have to do something different. And another thing is like before the week starts or a new month, I just block certain time slots where I don't accept any meetings. I don't usually accept any meetings after 5:00 in the evening. There are some exceptions because it's my time. The other thing, what I started was for half a year now, for actually more than half a year, I get up usually at 5:00 in the morning. So there's this one book, the 5 a.m. Club, that inspired me to do this. So where I start with a workout, meditation, creative work. So by 6:00, I have already spent or invested 1 hour of time on myself.
Mm.
That's a pretty cool thing to start a day. Now, not everyone likes to get up at 5, but they can only encourage it. It's a pretty cool experiment.
Yeah, no, it reminds me of another guy we had on the show who won't take a meeting before 11 a.m. So he doesn't get up particularly early, but he just makes sure he keeps that period after breakfast just for creative work, right? I guess not everybody has that ability to manage their schedule in that way, but it's the same idea.
We'll find something different approaches. Yes.
Yeah. So we talked about joy as an organizing principle, which I love. You also mentioned the golden rule. Yeah. Can you explain that and why you've chosen to emphasize that?
Well, the golden rule treats each other and the planet the way you want to be treated. What's a very old rule for social interaction, actually one of the oldest rules for social interaction, and more than several thousand of years old, and it's cross-cultural. I mean, no matter where culture you go, I mean, they all know the golden rule. They have different names for it. And Kim Paulman, she added the term treat each other and the planet, because it expands the concept of the golden rule to explaining it's not about us human beings or people. Actually, we're part of an ecosystem, and we have to look after our planet too, because we're part of the planet. And what it does is it helps us to, let's say, to move from the me to the we, from the egoistical me to the communal we. Okay, it's like, okay, I have to start with myself. It takes courage to apply the golden rule, but it always starts with me. And by practicing the golden rule, I invite other people into this, I should say, magical room space, and things change for the better. And in my book, Kim Pullman, she explains how this actually can change business, or has changed business, where it became a more human environment, or which she says, like, it's the golden rule is like a catalyst for a human business to evolve. And it's, since it's general, it's cross-cultural, it's not esoteric at all. It's very, very powerful. It's very powerful.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. And it reminds me of Tom van der Lubbe, who runs an organization in Holland called Visi, and that's it. There is no handbook for the company. There's no policies. There's just the golden rule.
It's just the golden rule. I mean, again, it's like what Kim explains. Kim Pullman explains it very beautifully when she said, again, it's like it's not simple. I mean, well, certainly it is simple when you read it, but there's the three prerequisites: empathy, courage, and drive, which is basically action. Okay, but it takes courage. It takes courage. Interestingly, I think kids, when they play, they don't talk about it, they just do it. And again, this is something maybe we have unlearned in our business environment, which is very sad.
Yeah. Well, I would say, I mean, I guess having kids is, yeah. I'm not sure that, I mean, I just watched my kids, we had a female friend came over, like a girl, a similar age. And one of my boys spent the whole time telling her he didn't like her. I don't like you. But, yeah. So there's a socialization that happens with children though, right? So it's not like kids are born like these pure creatures of virtue, right?
Well, they're, in the foreword of the book, I dedicate the book to my son and my daughter, because they have been probably one of the most important, the best, and most influential teachers I have had for so many years now. When they're now 17 and 19 years old, and because they look, usually the kids, they can look right into your heart, and they ask me then, it's like, why do you act this way? You know, why don't you just do what you really want to do? It's like, you would like to do this. Like, why didn't you just say it? You know, what is so difficult? Just say what you really think. I mean, you're saying this, but you want to say something different, right? And it's like they catch me all the time, or they caught me all the time. And they actually also encourage me to write the book, or to start working on the book, and to share it. Which there's some chapters which are very personal, and I kind of like tested the cold water on Facebook when I published some of the blogs, or just post-its, and see if there was, what reaction there were. And the reactions were all positive. And I thought, like, okay, why do you think it's all negative, that people hate it and stuff? You know, besides, people hate it, okay, fine. It's their problem. You know, it's like, kind of like, I want to share something which I'm thinking of, which is like my philosophy, or this is something I'm working on. And I want to help make our planet a better world. Simple as this. And I want to have fun along the way. Enjoy. Yeah. It's not like, oh God, I have a plan. This is all work. No, I want to play along, basically. And this is, sometimes it's difficult.
Right. Yeah. And I think the fact, I think this is part of a trend here, right? A paradigm shift. The fact you're bringing personal experience into this business book. And I think this is part of what this podcast is about, but I think it's part of, we can't talk about human businesses. We can't talk about conscious businesses unless we're talking about individuals and their journeys, their own evolution. as part in the context of human business. Like it seems to me the shift is away from conceptual ideas around how business can be run, which is important. You talk to that to some extent in this book, and more about individual process of evolution for people within these organizations.
That's true. I mean, it's like people say, well, it's a business book. It is a business book to a certain extent, but it's not, let's say, technical business book. As I've mentioned, the working title was Being Human in the Digital Age. So it starts with us, and it also explains how can we translate, how can you apply it in a business setting, in a live setting or a project setting, what have you. People say, what's the target audience of the book? It's like, well, it's really anyone who's interested in shaping the future, who is worried about the digitization and what does it all lead to, and think, how can I approach it? And I shared the story with this couple I met during the World Economic Forum in Davos a couple of years ago, when I asked them, what do you think of the digital age? What do you think of digitalization? And they said, like, well, we don't really like it. It's like we're really concerned the technology takes over our lives, and we didn't really like it too much. And then I asked the question, okay, do you know how you want to live in the future? And they said, like, of course we do. We want to live in harmony with nature and of course society, and but it's basically we want to have a human life. We're not resources. We're just like, we love our family and friends, and the cool thing they said, like, by the way, with our grandkids, we can even communicate with them. We use Skype, and we can still drive a car. We have this button we click, and then the car parks for us, and that's pretty cool. And all of a sudden they start talking about all these technical gadgets, and then it's like, let me repeat my first question. What do you think of the digital age, of the digital transformation? It's like, well, now that you ask again, it's like, I think we have to qualify our first initial statement, but it's not about technology. It's about how we want to live. They got it. And actually the older generation, therefore, can actually be role models. It's not they don't understand anything about the digital age. Often they have a better understanding about the digital age than, say, geeks.
Yeah. Because often they're so immersed in the possibilities of the technology, they can lose track of what it's all for, right?
Yes.
Yeah. In service of what? And I think it's I think you're starting to dive into this now. And what I see it as, I see this as being partly a kind of a merger of what we've got. This, I know it's got some baggage, the term self-development, but we do have this paradigm we're in, right? We're in the age of self, right? Where we all seem to have the resources and an increasing appetite to go within, to do the self-work, to begin self-actualizing, however we want to call it. That's a part of society right now. And it's like, that's over crashing into, the digital world, the business world. And I think we're going to see more and more people demanding to continue their journey, like within the work context, right? And have these two worlds merge. Absolutely. And Menlo Innovations and other organizations get that and put it in the center of their business, but it's coming.
Yeah, it's actually, it's a fascinating time. I mean, yes, there are lots of crises, but crises are also opportunities to change something for the better.
Yeah.
That does not mean that I underplay the crisis we have. No, they have to be dealt with, no doubt. Okay, but it's not, if you only focus on the negative, this is what you get. There are always two sides of the coins. I say I'm an economist. The economist says on the one hand, on the other hand. That's why I guess Truman said, "Give me a one-handed economist." Life is more complex. It's not even there are more than two sides. But it always starts with us, how we want to look at the world and how we want to shape it.
Yeah. And I think you're modeling it, right? The fact that you stay committed to your skiing and your tango and you make space for all that in your life, right?
Yeah, well, if you don't have time, just create it. I guess when people say, "Oh, I don't have time for my hobby," and I'm yeah, there can be times when it's very difficult, especially when you say you have a family with young kids. It's can be pretty packed, and yet we just have to find ways and means to create the time. If we just wait for the time to be given, then maybe nobody gives us the time. And we have to create the time. Maybe it's just like a few minutes. Okay, fine. Get up 5 minutes earlier and then see what happens. And just like this is your precious time. And it doesn't really have to be 2 or 3 hours. Do we have all the time I'd like to have for certain things like rock climbing, what have you? No. But it can create the time. It takes discipline, yes, but I get back a lot.
Yeah. The other tip I wanted to share with our listeners, I don't want to lose it, is you talk about this asking questions, right? And even if you don't have time to meditate, there's another way to get an answer to these deep questions, and that's to write them down in a book before you go to sleep.
This is, I don't know where I picked this up. I've been doing this for quite a few years. It's like, okay, you have a question in your mind. And what I do is like, I write it down in a book or in a notebook, and then just go to bed. And the first thing I do in the morning, I pick up my pen and I start writing, kind of like a journaling, but I actually answer the question, whatever comes to my mind. And it's pretty amazing what comes up, because this is like when you are in contact with your, you can say, subconscious, with your real being, okay? There are not so many thoughts, from the day in, day out work. And it's kind of like a clean mind, you can say, clear mind, and you can think clearly. And then you just write down the answers. And it's very often I get like some answers, intuitive answers, which can be quite surprising. And then, of course, you need to have the guts to follow through.
Right.
And find out what it is. It's kind of like, okay, should I do this or that? Intuitively, in most cases, we have the answer right away. But then, it's these little thoughts come in. Now, what if maybe the other thing's much better? Well, I know, Thomas, like, you like the red much better than the black because last time you had the black, you didn't really like it. It's like, oh, no, maybe the blue. In most cases, if you try to make a choice, often the first intuitive thought that comes to you is probably the best for you. Okay. And the more you are in sync with your intuition, the easier it becomes. But with these little exercises, basically finding the answers to your questions in your dream at night, now that's very simple. And I should say it works.
Yeah. But I totally relate to sometimes you get the answer, but do you have the courage to follow the quiet voice, right? It's that's part of the work, isn't it? It's acting on the answer. Yeah, that's where the courage comes in. Yeah. Great. Is there anything we've not touched on? We must talk about this human design spaces. Let's talk about the human spaces. So that's an important chapter, human spaces. Right?
Well, I was wondering, it's like, what's so special with human business? And in the human business, they have, say, human and creative spaces for the individual as well as the team. And this is really one of the distinguishing features, you can say, of a human business. What's the space? It's basically on an individual level, it's kind of like you're in a flow. You're totally in the present, in the here and now. And it opens new spaces of creativity. Otto Scharmer from MIT talks about presencing. And athletes talk about a flow state. And it's like where time seems to stand still and everything's possible, or things pop up. And you can start, and on the individual level, you just like, it's basically calm down, listen to or becoming aware of your breathing and trying to be here in the now, even if it's only for a few moments. On the level when you talk with another person, it's like cultivating dialogues. It's not like you talk and I listen. It's active, it's empathic, it's generic, generative listening. So you don't react right away, but you let things settle and see what happens. It's true listening. Okay, generative listening, Otto Scharmer calls it, and that's a true dialogue. And then on the say team level or company, as I say team or company level, it's like again this overlap of these 3 MVPs I talked earlier about: the purpose, the vision, the practice. Can I be part of something bigger? And where do I come in? What do I contribute to it? And you have to create these spaces which are not planned. You can say, open the space and see what happens. And then you still step in the space and co-create with your peers and be open for what wants to emerge. And it's kind of like people say, yeah, we have an innovation manager, we plan innovation. No, innovation cannot really be planned. It emerges true innovation, unless you do just process innovation, which is an improvement, but it's not really innovation. The space, this human space, design space is, you can say it's magical. It's, you create an environment where you give people the chance to be whole, to be in the here and now. And it's true brainstorming could be like this, with certain rules where you say, okay, we can say anything, but the word but is not allowed. Okay? Anything. Just like no buts. Okay? And it's simple, but all of a sudden, when you do this brainstorming for 20 minutes or so, or sometimes for 10 minutes, and then there can be pause. Don't be afraid of this pause. Let's see what happens. Sometimes a second appears to be like 1 or 2 minutes or even longer. But just like pause and see what wants to show up, what wants to emerge. Does it always happen? No. But still, quite often it does. And it can be it's very difficult to describe in words, but when new ideas come up, it's pretty amazing. It's very refreshing.
Yes. Yeah. Energizing.
Yes, energizing.
Yeah.
And it's and give some examples how to do this, some of the practices I've been using to create these spaces. And there are numerous other ways to do this.
Yeah. Yeah. And at the base of it all for me is this connection, right? It's this giving space for us to connect with each other.
And people are afraid of it for whatever reason. Because often, especially guys, we are afraid of exposing our own vulnerability. The amazing thing is, like, if we show our vulnerability, we've actually found out it's a strength.
It's part of our manliness, as you say. Boys don't cry, men do.
Exactly. And it's like, I had when I started also at Allianz, the first week, they said, like, how are you feeling? And how, probably there's a lot of things going on. I say, yeah, truly, honestly, I'm totally overwhelmed. I have no idea where to start. I'm shocked. It's kind of like a puzzle and all new white pieces. And I still have to find the corners, but I'm overwhelmed. And they looked at me and said, wow, well, we didn't expect that you would say this since you have so much experience, but that's cool. But how can we help you? And it started a different dialogue. Do I have to know all the answers to the questions I'm being asked? No. You see, when politicians say at the beginning of the pandemic, some politicians, they say, like, you know what? We have no idea what to do next because this has never happened before. We just don't know the answer. When we try things, and hopefully it works. Maybe it doesn't, then we let you know. That was authentic, truly authentic. The longer the pandemic lasted, the more they fell back into the old behavioral patterns of lying and cheating and excuses and what have you. And it's like, it's sad. It's like, that's why they lost not only their authenticity, but the credibility. And it's a crisis of the system.
Yeah. Well, we talked about that before we came on the show. To me, it's exposed the darker side of these political systems we exist within.
Yep.
But, yeah, that's another podcast, perhaps. Good. Okay. Well, yeah, I was just, before I dived into human spaces, I was going to ask, is there anything, anything within the book that we've not touched on that you'd want to share before we close out here?
Well, there are quite a few chapters. I'm going to talk about dancing, how life is a dance, and what I learned from tango. And there are also interviews. I mentioned Steve Denning, Kim Pullman. There is a interview with Dirk Gemein. He is a happiness teacher. I am interviewing Malte Klavin, adventure photographer.
I've still got the image of the tarantula on his head. I can't get that one right. Wonderful. You've got some wonderful pictures in the book, actually. Yeah.
And well, as I haven't mentioned, but the book was first published in Germany in German by Haufe. And I have translated the book. I submitted to a publisher now in the US, but I'm still looking for actually a publisher. It has not been published in the English world. So those of you who are listening and who actually might be interested in reading the English manuscript and possibly know a good publisher, contact me, and I'm happy to share this. And otherwise, there is also on my website, you can find the summary of the key points of each chapter. You can download this for free.
Brilliant. Yeah. Yes. Well, thank you. And I love the chapter on dance. Actually, we haven't got into it, but that maybe we could save that for people who get the book. Yeah. Well, thank you. Thanks once again for your time. Wonderful conversation.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.
Onwards to human businesses.
Great. I enjoyed it. Again.
Onwards to human businesses. It's our future. We just got to create it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. Thanks again. We'll put the links to the to the website and everything, and where people can contact you if they do know a good publisher, because we must get it out there. Good. All right. Thanks again.